me, although you have not seen me. For it is written concerning me that those who have seen me will not believe me, and that those who have not seen me, they will believe and be saved. But concerning what you wrote to me, namely to come to you, it is necessary for me to complete here all for which I was sent, and after the completion to be received up to him that sent me. But when I am received up, I shall send one of my disciples to you to heal your affliction and to impart life to you and your people. There you have it. Letter from King Abgar to Jesus, letter to Jesus back to King Abgar. You believe it? Kind of go like this or like this. Come on, take a stand. Go out on a limb. Decide you're just going to do something wildly crazy and have an opinion. All right? Do you believe that those letters are authentic? No. Does anybody believe they're authentic? If so, I've got some land I want to sell you. Nobody believes that the letters from King Abgar to Jesus are authentic letters, and nobody believes that the letter from Jesus to Abgar is authentic. We believe they are pseudepigraphy. Remember we did this before? What's the meaning of anonymity? Which documents, name me a document in the New Testament that is anonymous. The Gospels, exactly. The names in the Gospels were added by later scribes. They weren't part of the original document. So they're not pseudonymous because the Gospel of Matthew actually doesn't claim itself to be by Matthew. It just is out there. So they are anonymous. The letter to the Hebrews is anonymous. It doesn't even claim to be by Paul or by anybody else that we know of. It's just a letter that's there in the text. I mean, the text is just there by itself. Name me a document we've talked about that is pseudonymous. Anybody? What? 1st, 2nd, 3rd John? Actually, they don't claim to be by John. That's, again, anonymous letters. We will get to them today. Pseudonymity means it claims to be by someone who it's not by, who we just don't believe it's by. So the letters of Abgar, the letter of Abgar to Jesus and of Jesus to Abgar, scholars call that pseudonymous. They're written in their names, but we don't believe they actually wrote them. Now, why do you say you don't believe those letters are authentic? I mean, obviously, the tone of my voice, I was messing with them, so that could have tipped you off. And you may think, well, I've just never heard that there's an actual letter of Jesus of Nazareth that survives, so you would think that you would have heard about that in the New York Times if there actually was one that was authentic. But what else about the letters that you heard might tip you off that they're pseudonymous? Yes, sir.
If the letter was written in Greek, then that would be a big hit.
Exactly. The letters are written in Greek. So if the letters are written in Greek, well, we don't really have any evidence that Jesus spoke Greek. And if he did speak Greek, he probably didn't write Greek at the literary level that those letters were obviously written. I mean, I don't know if you noticed, but there's a certain stylisticness to them, even in the English translation, that sounds like these are written by educated people. They know how to write good letter forms. So Jesus, we don't know anything about King Abgar much, but we can certainly say that most of us don't believe Jesus had the kind of education that he could have written a Greek letter like that. So that's one indication. Anything else? Yes, sir. It sounds like the Gospel of John, exactly. Remember the line that said, some people have seen me and not believe me? But it's just almost like a quotation from the Gospel of John. So you kind of think, this sounds like something that some Christian scribe would write long after the life of Jesus. And why not? I mean, if you're a Christian scribe living in the 3rd century, some scholars date these letters to around 250, the year 250 or so. It's a guess. But and if you're a scribe living in around the year 250, and to you, Jesus is the Son of God. He's divine. He's powerful. He's miracle. He's the emperor of the cosmos, the world. And so you kind of think in your popular mindset, well, why wouldn't kings who lived during the time of Jesus have heard about him and know about him? He did all these miraculous deeds. Wouldn't he have been world famous? In fact, a lot of modern people have the same idea. They're very surprised when they realize that Jesus actually, nobody knew anything about him in his lifetime. And they say, well, but he did all these miracles, and the Gospels talk about these crowds that followed him and these kinds of things. Wouldn't that really have made the headlines of the time? And you say, well, there actually were a lot of miracle workers running around the ancient world. There were a lot of prophets. There were a lot of people claiming to raise the dead. It wasn't that unusual a thing. So, no, Jesus wasn't famous during his own lifetime. But you can imagine how a scribe, a Christian scribe in the middle of the 3rd century, would naturally think that this person he worships as Lord must have been famous, and therefore it's entirely believable that there could have been correspondences between Jesus and kings around the world. And so these letters get made up as part of just basic Christian piety. You know, if the letters didn't exist, they ought to exist, so we'll write them. We have other examples of pseudonymity. We have, for example, letters between Paul and the philosopher Seneca, which nobody believes they're authentic. Nobody believes that the philosopher Seneca, who was the aide, if you recall, to the Emperor Nero. He was an advisor to Nero,